you so much for joining me on the Creative Awakening Now podcast. I'm your host, David Matters, and I'm here to bring you stories, interviews, and insights relating to the topics of creativity, inspiration, and practice. My intention is to connect with other people who employ a heart-centered approach to the artistic process and to share this profoundly inspiring content with anyone who cares to hear it. I hope you enjoy. This is a dream, and a dream is never the same. My guest this week was Keri Evjy. Keri is a seeker, pathfinder, learner, teacher, healer, and an earth dweller committed to seeding mycelia and cultural topsoil through transformational experiences to nudge human evolution. She is moved by a deep passion to love life, to be of service, and cultivate regenerative relationships with the earth. The Regenerative Life Design Program is birthed from her yearning to demystify nature's lessons for the full awakening of humankind, healing the disconnect between humans and the planet. You can connect with her or find program information at regenerativetraining.com or kerievjy.com. And my conversation with her was very true to that bio. It was very deep into her love for nature and how that has influenced her and how that's informed her work. Go into some early memories of her when she first kind of had this this awareness of a deeper connection with the earth and how that influenced her. And we go into the work that she's doing now, both hands-on in the field with permaculture design kind of stuff, but also this more kind of spiritual side of things where she's using like the metaphor of nature to kind of connect humans with that universal energy. It's a very holistic approach, and she goes pretty deep into it. She's got a lot to say, and she's definitely got a lot of love for this whole program that she's creating and designing. And so she offers coaching and different things like that. And I'll have the links up so you guys can check all that out. And I hope you enjoy this episode. It's a little different than most of the things I've had in the past. It's not directly talking about music or art or things hands-on in that way. This is more of like it's like the essence that goes behind it all, though. So it's really cool. It's a good conversation. So I hope you'll check that out, and I hope you will go over to creativeawakeningnow.com and you will check out everything I got there with my blog posts and some of the writings that I've gotten published, and my ebook about my travels in Peru and my plant medicine journey. And you can check out my music. We got a Life Like Water tab there. That's my band name. And I got a lot of great stuff coming up with all that. So stay connected. Reach out if you got any suggestions for the podcast, or if you just want to connect and say hey. I always appreciate that. And I got some great episodes coming up in the weeks to come too. So definitely stay tuned. If you guys want to support the podcast, I would really appreciate it if you go over to wherever you listen, but especially iTunes, subscribe, and leave a comment or leave a review, leave a rating, whatever you feel called to do. It's all helpful. It all helps get the podcast out there. And just share it with your friends. That's also a big one. Anyone that you know that's into creativity and into these deeper elements of creativity, especially. I think hopefully this podcast will resonate with them. So, any of that would be wonderful. Appreciate it. And enjoy this episode. I'll talk to you soon. Much love. Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for joining us. And thank you, Keri, for being here with me today.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Totally, yeah. So this is a new direction for this podcast, and I've been looking to kind of reach out and touch into the creative spirit outside of the typical realm of creativity with music and art and things like that, and the natural side, the earth side, the systems, all these different things. So maybe if you could just talk about what it is that you do and your whole path getting you to where you are now, and then we'll kind of break it down from there.
Sure. That sounds great.
Awesome.
Well, I consider myself to be an educator and an earth dweller first, a humanist and a pathfinder. And I've been developing my own sense of understanding myself through the intimacy of the larger natural world since I was a tyke growing up in New England. I went snowboarding and skiing with my family. I spent summers in the water, immersed, hanging out with beaver and eating blueberries on the forest floor. And I think just over the course of time, I've really kept this commitment to whatever my personal and career goal efforts would be to really help catalyze and be an agent of social and ecological change for the betterment of myself and so that humans can earn their rightful place to stay on the earth. And I fell in love with Spanish as my secondary language, but it brought me to many different Spanish-speaking countries and entertaining being a kindergarten to fifth grade Spanish teacher and being an interpreter for a school district in Oregon. And I have utilized these literacy tools, whether it be eco literacy or language acquisition, as well as music too. These have been very common threads in my life that have helped me become more intimate with myself, with my desires, as well as people have sought me out for that genuine connection because they see me as approachable, they see me as wise, as a pathfinder, someone who's done their due diligence to practice what it is to stay sane and to be connected and to acknowledge how brokenhearted we can be as a human experiencing all the loss that's happening on a grand scale, both in our community here in Asheville, as well as, you know, the magnitude of this extractive economy. And so my life path has been to be of service. And it's been to first continue to direct my passion towards something that I think I can have impact and change. And that's to help people demystify nature's intelligence. That this is the place where we all have come from. It's where our initial fantasies and our understanding of self 10,000 generations ago in human scale, you know, like we were wilderness, we were wild. That still is a part of us. And I imagine that you tap into some of that with your singer-songwriting experiences and sharing. And so I like to utilize this as a platform to help people reemerge and remember how to be in right relationship with themselves and how to develop intimacy from themselves on an interior scale and then moving outwards wherever they place their energy.
Cool. Well, so can you maybe break it down exactly what it is that you're doing at this point? You have your website and you have different retreat things it looks like you run or workshops, and clearly you connect with people on this deeper level than just what's on the outside. So I wonder if you could break it down and show us what that looks like.
Sure. It starts with my connection to nature. So before I get on a coaching call or connect with 5 people or 200 people in an audience and be the conduit that I can be, I have dedicated practices of Qigong and of learning how to be available, how my heart, my spirit, and my mind can be available for Earth's teachings. So sometimes that looks like a sit spot, which is a really easy way for us humans to quiet our minds. Find a designated area out in nature. Make sure it's comfortable. So if you need a cushion or you need an extra shawl or something to cover those shoulders. But it's just an opportunity for us to practice no thinking, but to open ourselves up to a food cycle, to see if we can see a food chain, or to see if to observe and interact in our environment, and to bring about that childlike curiosity and make observations of what do I see, and so what might that imply, and really slow down our thinking so that we allow for more opportunities and solutions to come forward without going right to judgment or to something, a conditioned response or a habitual training of thought. And so I've been excited to share this information. It's actually been a compilation of 18 years life experience, being an outdoor educator, being a chronic entrepreneur. And what I find and discover is that people really are drawn out of themselves, out of their conditioning, out of their behavioral patterns, out of their belief systems that could be chronically antiquated. You know, like we have this opportunity to change every day. I went to a Zook class last week, and I just was marveling at, like, you know, wow, I turned 40 this year, and every day I can learn something new. You know, that's a choice. That's an attitude. And so on a regular basis, what regenerative life design looks like is I am in conversations in the field with people who are seeking ecological design consultation from me. And we're using a mentorship kind of relationship that helps them create clarity in their life's purpose, helps them make deeper connections with their intimate ones, helps them overcome some insecurities by tapping into something bigger than themselves and realizing that, you know, they have this whole range of emotions as a human, and they don't need to be so attached to that form, but they can just let things flow through them, like the water flows through, like it's connected to the hydrological cycle, whether it's tears coming from my eyes or, you know, it's the French Broad going to the Tennessee, going to the Mississippi, going to the Gulf of Mexico, going to the the Atlantic. So acknowledging that, you know, our feelings are temporal, and that we are human beings. We're not human doings. That our life is based on experience. And so how can we really cherish and uplift that in each other? So I talk to people out in the field. I also coach folks through Regenerative Life Design. And that looks like a discovery session where I ask people very poignant questions about what they want to see a few years down the road, and where is the gap from where they want to, how they want to feel and experience in their life, and really to hold that viscerally so that we can walk tenderly and bravely together to try on different nature-informed principles. Some of these ideas would be like working from patterns to details, or observing and interacting, like what works well, what doesn't work well, based on what I love to do, or based on what drains my energy. And I also teach classes. For 6 years, I taught permaculture design courses in Atlanta and Asheville and other places around the country. And this, to me, is an inner landscape dialogue. So it's taking those more applicable universal strategies and technologies that come out of permaculture and holistic life design and turning it inside, because really the truth of how we all engage and how we can improve our community is first us taking that personal dive. So I coach people and I share with folks. I also have an online community class that's free for anybody who wants to come and join for a half hour the second Wednesday of the month from 6 to 6:30. And I posit a meditation, an earth-based meditation, and just look at what I'm feeling, what I'm experiencing, what the trees are speaking to me about. And essentially it's a community place for people to look at different cycles and ways that we can apply nature's intelligence to our lives to help create more functionality, more vitality, more connection, and hopefully interdependence as a society.
Cool. Yeah, I really like that the inner landscape dialogue, or just inner landscape design, whatever you said it was. When you were telling me about what you did and I was reading your work, I was like, the blending of, you know, earth systems and like nature observation with the human experience. I was like, so are you a permaculture teacher who's, helping in the field of permaculture with the spiritual side of things, or are you a spiritual teacher bringing that into the permaculture design? And I couldn't exactly tease the difference out. And I mean, I guess there really isn't a huge difference. Based upon what you're saying, you do kind of both, yeah?
I do both. It's true. I just go where people are asking of my skills and my gifts. And I've decided that I'm a generalist. I've decided that there's so many different ways to creation, to being creative, to having the spark. And I'm just returning back to Asheville after scooting for about 3 years, and I'm re-inhabiting myself, pulling back from the things that I naturally found myself in these, professional spheres, and allowing myself to be transformed, to have learned and undergone birth and redeath cycles over the last few years. And so I'm returning here, and I am a healer, and I know how to plant a garden, and I know how to connect people to the plants in their yard, and to help them feel less alone and less confused and more embraced by the evolutionary nature of the cycles once we start paying attention, and acknowledge that whatever we see in the earth as an expression is also happening to us. In the fall, for example, when we see the deciduous trees lose all their leaves, we have to get a grip and let go. That's a time of harvest. It's a time of celebration. Things tend to pick up socially. We get a little bit besieged under pressure for hanging out with our friends and, maintaining all of our social relationships during the winter time, especially during the holidays and things. But the trees are also, even though they've lost their leaves and now it's part of the forest dendritis, it's now, that carbon is now going to be locked into the soil. And that's going to be food for the other mycorrhiza and the mycelium and any of the forest dwellers that are trying to make their homes for the wintertime. Those sugars are also now finally going back into the root system, and symbolically, similarly for humans too. If we take a moment to pause during our, November, December, January, our sugars are also being concentrated. A lot of us live some of us live. We're talking where we live. We're talking, right now it's almost dusk. And so there's this natural drawing in. There's this conductivity to what is most essential. Let's focus on the relationships that feed and nourish our spirit, that help us understand our growth from one life year to the next life year to the next year, and what are things that we are ready to re-envision in ourselves. Those are those little seeds, those little nuggets, right? And each seed of an oak tree, for example, has the potentiality of a full-grown tree, has the potentiality of a full-grown community. So how can we utilize nature's metaphor to really amplify our wild and precious life, as Mary Oliver says, and to be really honest and authentically, devotionally ourselves. And each one of us has gifts to offer. And this is the time where we need to be deeply devotional to inclusion. There's no, lumping and splitting anymore. That so much of, we're starting to see the breakdown of society, and that people are being disenfranchised systematically. And so at this time, it's important for us to acknowledge ourselves as innate designers. Humans are innate designers, whether we're making smart decisions or we're fucking up. And so this is an opportunity for revision. One of permaculture principles is to observe and interact and to accept and regulate feedback. So, we're seeing that these hands could be super beneficent. They could be, creating and promoting goodwill and commonly held nutrient-dense foods for everyone, and viable water, pure water, and really help enhance the human spirit to be like this whole being. And so we're at this opportunity, this crisis, this opportunity really to redefine for ourselves if we're going towards love and kindness or we're going towards separation. And if we look to nature, we see far more cooperation. We see a assimilation of, for example, compost. I'm thinking like the digestion process. If we didn't have the consumers and the sow bugs and the beetles, for example, we would be unable to walk this earth for lack of, because there would be so much debris. And so what is it that we need to digest in our lives? What is it that we need to really let go of or assimilate? And how can that shine out more fully and presence what it is that our unique gift needs to bear at this time?
Yeah, so I mean, you're touching into so many permaculture principles, and taking the metaphors of nature and applying it to the human experience, and asking a lot of those questions of like, what if, or what are we waiting for, or how do we use this energy that is presented with us? And the whole process is, it's a really beautiful thing. I can see it. It kind of, to me, relates to like Taoism, just the water course way, connecting with the energy of the earth and following that example. And the one thing you said, humans are innate designers, and we're here, we have this kind of mind, this ability, these hands to create. And to me, that's why I was interested in all this with creativity, the whole topic of the creative energy of life, and like how do we apply that, and what do we do with it? And it doesn't become so obvious at first. What, people who are like, oh, I don't paint, or I don't take pictures, or whatever it is, what can I do? What would you say to somebody if they came with that kind of feeling, like, I'm not an artist, but I want to use my innate creative ability, and I want to, follow the examples of nature? Like, what kind of advice would you give them?
That's a great question. I would invite them into a visualization, to have them close their eyes, to have them deeply breathe into their biggest breath of the day, and consider the range of their being. Consider ways in which they show up in their life. Consider how each organism and each person has these innate gifts that can be revealed through our relationships, through our obstacles, through our opportunities. And I'd invite them into a deeper communion with themselves to explore what it is that potentially is really painful for them. Where is it that they've stopped or stymied their creative exploration? If they don't necessarily have a direct way in, then perhaps there's been some judgment, or there's been some turning away from an aspect of themselves. And I invite them to generally invite that aspect of them back to themselves and see what may appear. Tears may come. They may feel really sullen. They may not feel a thing. They may feel numb. They may realize they would really like to feel. I think that's part of the path to wholeness, is that our journey, the empowerment journey, begins with our mind and with our heart. And we all are innately creative. It's been stamped out of us. And we can believe that to the extent that our beliefs have a clench and hold on how we show up with ourselves or to ourselves. But that is also a belief that's been supplanted into our minds. And if we are energy articulating, if we are earth articulating, then we are incredibly potent creatures. And humans have this ability to have a very abstract language and vocabulary, and we're also able to be critical thinkers. And I think those are two things that separate humans from other animals, mammals, and other organisms. And so my invitation would be pretty simple, is to really aspire to be devoted to that place of nothingness, or that place of neutrality, and ask what may come out of that. There might be a spark of sound that comes from the mind or from the heart. There might be an impulse to move that comes from the body, which is a huge intelligence that is under wraps often and underappreciated in our society. We are full of multiple intelligences, and I would imagine that person experiences contraction or some sort of tightening through most of their operating procedures during the day. And so I would invite them really to loosen up and to start to feel. And from that place of developing intimacy with self, I think we can discover the path forward.
I can understand that, and connecting with somebody and, taking them deeper into themselves and trying to discover what it is that, we all have this. I think everybody has an idea that, you create a child, you're being a creative being. You create a meal for your family, you're a creative being. You brush off your car in the morning and you drive it out to the woods and you sit in the snow. Those kind of things are, intentional acts of creativity. And I think that I agree. Connecting with people in that way and bringing them back into themselves is a powerful thing. And now I'm wondering if we could kind of take it the other direction. And I really like the idea of the permaculture ethics, and not only taking the nature side and connecting with the human side, but connecting with the spiritual side, but doing the opposite now. How are you connecting with people in that realm where they're doing some kind of work with the earth, or they're doing, permaculture design, or landscaping, something simple like that. I know a lot of people who do landscaping, but they have no connection to the earth. They have no connection with their spiritual side of it, even if they really want to. What if you get into that realm? If somebody approaches you in that way, what kind of approach do you offer them?
Just one piece that as we were doing that little transitional note, I would also encourage someone, just because I thought it was a hot thing, but I also would encourage someone to really be spontaneous and to shake it up for themselves, and to not fall into their own predictable habits. That may also determine for them where it is that they're uncomfortable, where the edge is, which is the place where we get excited. We also get terrified. That's the place where we're actually in our largest growth curve. And so I'd invite someone to actually play with their personality. Nothing is fixed. It's entirely an invitation. And so for someone to be spontaneous and unpredictable, if they want to consider taking, a class that they've wanted to do for a long time, but they've been really hesitant about starting, just to push themselves into this edge place. And they're likely to rediscover something about themselves. And hopefully it's a creative aspect of themselves, which just means more that they have some greater understanding of themselves. So I just wanted to speak to that too, because there's nothing rigid about working with nature. She's so, I say she, but the energy of nature is just so wise and adaptive and hospitable and generous and cool and dank, and musty and solidified, though ever changing. And so, to return to that maternal place of all is well, and this is you too. And so go out and like be your be your force that you are. I just would encourage someone to take that kind of self-esteem that like, who are you not to be great and creative? So when I talk to people and I'm in their landscape, I'm hanging out with their blueberry bushes or their elderberries, or we're looking at the cardinal nest and where it's situated. What I've noticed is that what's been really helpful is I notice when clients typically perk up is when I'm talking about companion planting and mutual benefit plant communities. So plants are not isolated creatures. They're actually really social. And they also will move based on where they are better suited. So I'm not sure how much of a gardener you are, David, but I wonder if you've noticed, perhaps you've planted something that's been perennial, which means it comes back year after year after year. And you plant it in one place, and lo and behold, it creeps the next year, and it creeps a little further the next year, and then it might like leap to a whole other place to your garden. And the plant that you actually started like over here 10 feet has now moved to a sunny patch or something. So what I want to share is that nature, as well as humans, we have this potential to shapeshift and to make for more desirable conditions conducive for life and for more life-giving properties. So plants will move based on whether they're getting all their needs met or they're not. Humans do that too, I may avoid a conversation if I'm in my like lower evolutionary Keri place. I might avoid a conversation because I'm just unsure about how to handle myself, or I'm not sure if honesty would support this conversation, but I don't know if this person's ready to hear my honest sharing. And so I may try and do all sorts of things to modify that behavior. But I also am showing by my movement or my lack of coming closer that something is amiss. And so that's an example of how humans and plants potentially mirror some of the common behaviors. Going back to the plant families, plants are siphoning nutrition and resources to each other. Humans are doing the same thing too. They're in the form of nourishment and minerals and water and carbon for plants. And for humans, it's affection, it's care, it's order, it's synergy, it's, what are some other words? It's expression, it's artistry. We're motivated by lots of different things. And in that way, it shows how many yields are possible in relationship with other humans, or as plants are in relationship with other plants. Some plants are super symbiotic, like they grow bigger crop yields when they're right next to each other. Other plants are a little more parasitic, and they actually, can parasitize some more sensitive plants. So plants have personalities, plants have dimensionality, as do humans. And we all want to really grow, in our most ideal soils.
Fair enough. I can definitely connect with that. So, there's a lot of different ways that this conversation could go, and I want to get to like the business side of it, but I would like to just kind of turn it all way back and go back in time a little bit. And I just want to know what, from your earliest experiences, we're talking about the innate creativity and the creative path that got you to where you are doing what you do. What was some of the initial experiences that you had that were most inspiring and that kind of drove you to this path, because you're clearly deeply connected with the earth, and you have a lot of joy connecting other people to that too. I'm just curious if we can get a little glimpse at what your experience looked like to kind of put you on this path, and maybe it'll help others have an idea of how to connect as well.
Sure. Thanks for this chance. I remember feeling uncomfortable in my youth, in my family situation. Often, I am the middle of two boys. I was taught, or I presented as a tomboy. I held my cards close. I held my emotions close. I wanted to appear tough and impenetrable. And I remember taking my disgruntledness, my anger, and my confusion of really how to be a young female-bodied human with rambunctious brothers out to the woods. And I would lay down on the woods floor amongst hemlock and wintergreen ground cover and birch trees and beech trees. And I remember just like pouring my heart out and just being super tearful and being really real as a little girl kiddo, and remembering, wow, for some reason I'm feeling so okay with how this is happening to me right now. And there was something about that conductivity, about connecting more deeply to getting out of my human state and like tapping into, oh, this is kind of ephemeral. Like this is something, I may have all these kinds of feelings that move through my body, my hormone-induced, human body, but I could always come back to discharging it. If I just grounded myself, laid down flat on my back. I also remember a time when I was camping and I was really connected to the water. And I remember this maybe existential experience as a kid, just looking at how the water and the light was really dappling off the water. And I just was transfixed and mesmerized. And I think it was the first time that I noticed that there's an animation bigger than me at play, that the earth is actually like breathing and I'm breathing too. And so that was a really meta moment for me. As a kid, I was encouraged to garden when my parents saw that I was Googling over these seed catalogs that would come like in February in Massachusetts when it was covered with 4 feet of snow. And so they gave me an allowance actually, and for gardening. And I remember purchasing capillary matting and like studying the conditions and the seed germination rates and figuring out how often I could tend my little plants that we set up in our back little living room area. And I can't recall actually how much yield came from those first few years of trial and error, but I took great pride in having this imaginary, very magical and very real world to access while going through some of the dysfunctionality of being a human, emotional, little person, and trying to cope with the stimulus and the influx of insecure feelings and understanding what growing up was meaning to me. And so I started gardening at a really early age, and I think that really helped me understand more of what it's about to be gentle on ourselves, to be really compassionate, and to take the long view with ourselves. I'm noticing that most of my life, I've been really committed to social, ecological, and economically oriented projects. Projects that don't, that aren't profit over the disenfranchisement of the earth or the desecration of the earth or extraction of people. And so at a really young age, I acknowledged that I was very much a humanitarian and really connected to something that really helped be a portal for my stability, my like self-stability as a young person. And I think that helped me when I fell in love with Spanish. I studied abroad in Ecuador and fell in love with the Spanish language, and really was of service in Oregon to support Spanish-speaking families and undocumented workers who were just seeking education and appropriate housing and amenities, social amenities for their family units. Something really burst open to me about how it's all the same. That what we do to the earth, we do to ourselves. And if we have violent self-talk, we probably have violence in our actions and activities towards others or towards the earth. And I think my life is a self-study, David. I'm not perfect. I definitely have aspirations that I yearn for that haven't been realized. But I do acknowledge that the time is now. We're the ones who we've been waiting for. And the steps are all found in nature in terms of how to be cooperative, how to engage in intergenerational living, how to really share the yields and create this cultural topsoil that unites us all and really helps uplift the creative human spirit for everyone and for all beings for that matter too. Because humans at this point in time operate and act like we're the top of the food chain, and or that we're like the most omnipotent mammal to walk the earth, and we're really being checked right now. I think that most animals would prefer to see fewer of us around so that they could just merely exist, and that's a conversation that our species really needs to have. Because we are directly interdependent, whether we acknowledge it and pay homage to it and respect to it. But I think that's part of our learning. Humans are a pretty young species, and we're definitely going through our adolescent phase. And we have this really ripe opportunity through, some of the benefits of globalization, that we can all talk to each other. We can really unify around inherent rights for ecosystems, for watersheds, that is only a positive thing. And then we do worlds of good to support equality and social, environmental justice work around the world.
Yeah, totally. Thank you for going deep into those memories and touching into that place of inspiration. It's always nice to connect with people personally about what they're doing and find what personally drives them. But sometimes it can be hard to dig deep. There's some people don't make that connection. You clearly have your heart in your work to a large degree, so that's good.
And I also want to say too that I've sang all my life, and I think that I found myself taking on different personalities and different feelings as a young person, singing other people's lines, like being a part of musicals. And I'm thinking of Green Day. I'm thinking of, Liz Phair and Juliana Hatfield and Pink Floyd and, some other Nirvana, like Soundgarden. I don't know. I'm kind of in a genre. Joni Mitchell. But, early understandings of what poetry, what agony turned into, lyricism turned into, digestion of an experience. Mm-hmm. And as a younger person, I fell in love with singing, and I got a lot of flack from my siblings also for singing because they just, I guess, wanted silence, or they just wanted to chide me, whatever it was. So I actually put that under wraps for a decade or longer, until I had a housemate in Oregon who was unabashedly fearless about having people over for potlucks and, Keri, do you want to come sing? And I remember feeling so timid, and I'm sure I was sweating bullets, and my voice super shook, but we sang a song for everybody, and I think it just awakened me to acknowledge the transcendence of music and the power of song that really helps us understand ourselves more clearly. For Regenerative Life Design, this online training program and coaching program, I utilize creativity, especially song, visualizations, and especially song to help people to understand themselves as in this larger web, in this larger matrix of creativity. And songs they're a vibrational medicine. I'm thinking of mantras or hymns, things that we sing on repeat that really help us to digest the world, that help us to get a greater understanding of where we're at. And so that transcendence can actually shift our DNA. It can help us reboot. It can help us remember. And so this training program, I've offered a dozen songs for people to hear. They're through the Singing Alive and the earth-based lineages. So these are songs that connect the human heart to earth-based practices and principles. And so it's a double dipping. It's essentially hearing and reading about the nature-informed principles and really understanding the shortcomings of the modern human and what we can do with our hearts open and our minds, creatively fresh and willing to consider a larger point of view. Songs can really help us to augment and make those changes more rapidly. So I use songs to connect us to the way, which is to open ourselves up to that creativity, that fertility, that place of possibility.
Awesome.
And it doesn't matter what people sound like. That's also the other thing too, is that there's so much technology in the body that just, the mind needs to shut off or be given another task so that we actually can get to the truth of who we are. And I remember having a voice training teacher who said, Keri, anyone can sing. It's about, it's about whether or not you put your heart into it. And that's totally true. The more that I hang out in a facilitator Pathfinder role for people, that transference is very palpable. When someone's interest and when someone is really putting the effort forward to be in that creative force and let the muse take them over, that is so visible. And that really benefits the whole group.
Yeah, well, I would have to say that I agree wholeheartedly with that. It's a very powerful medium for sure. And that's another great way to connect with people and open them up in a deep way and, just bring out what's always been in there. And sometimes it's kind of locked away, but music is like this special key that can be used and creativity in general, so I think it's beautiful. I appreciate you going into that direction with it. And when we've been going for a while here, and I want to just say, or I want to just get you to put out some information. If somebody was to contact you, what is it that you offer, whether it's coaching one-on-one or classes or whatever it is, and, what contacts or whatever can they, how should people get a hold of you?
Sure, absolutely. So the program that I've been talking about is called Regenerative Life Design, and that's an online training and coaching program. It's designed for earth dwellers, for everybody, to lean into nature's intelligence, to design an optimum, cooperative, balanced, and connected life for you and for the planet. And you can find more information about the online training. It has an introductory special offer currently. So you can find that at regenerativetraining.com, or you could also look me up. My name is Keri Evjy, KeriEvjy.com. So you can find me in those two places. I also have an Instagram presence and a Facebook presence through Regenerative Life Design, so you can find me there. I also host an online Zoom call, which is open to matriculated and prospective students, earth dwellers. Anyone is welcome to come. And I offer a earth-based visualization for the first 10 minutes or so, and then speak about some metaphors that are percolating in my heart in terms of what month that we're in and how that might help access creativity, access greater compassion and understanding in a person's life, and help them see how using nature-informed principles can build a more vital, a more jubilant, a more connected life. And I'm also offering a 2-day training, probably in Asheville. I'm open to also offering the training in Charlotte and in Atlanta this winter. I'm looking for venue spaces, so I'm open to cross-pollinate if people hear me and resonate with what I am sharing and would like to help me connect the dots. I'm also open in Asheville too to offer a monthly face-to-face circle for anyone who wants to connect about these topics. And I do offer some holistic landscape design consultations, both on Skype and also physically here in Asheville. And then off topic, but I also am a serial entrepreneur. I have a vegan nut cheese business with my co-founder, Adrian Hawkins, here based in Asheville. It's called Dioses, vegan nut cheese. Dioses is goddesses in Spanish. And Adrian and I met in Mexico. As you are aware, as I just shared, Spanish was one of my first loves in terms of language and loves in terms of my understanding of myself. And nut cheese is a plant-based superfood. And I really am interested in elevating the conversation about cuisine and sense of place. And so right now it's cashews and sunflowers, but hopefully soon it'll be showcasing our locally sourced nuts of hickories and pecans and acorns, and really helping people relocalize. We live in a forest ecology, so let's eat like one. So awesome. There's a few ways you can tap in and connect with me, but I really enjoy demystifying and supporting greater intimacy for humans so that we can really connect with what's right in front of us, which is all of nature and understanding each other more deeply.
Beautiful. That's great. Thank you. Yeah, I'll have the links up to your website and all that on the show notes in this episode, and I'll be sure to share it with everyone, and hopefully they reach out and connect with you. I really appreciate what you got going on. So thank you, Keri, for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Cool.
I hope to see you soon.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you all so much for listening, and we will catch you next time. Gathering lessons